Hi everyone. So we are back with the Brain Warriors Way. We have been going through sustenance. We're going through mastery, so mindset, assessment. Now we're on sustenance. What can you eat to think and feel like a warrior? But I've been getting a lot of questions from people actually who say that they cannot eat some of the foods on this program. So what do you do if your doctor tells you that you can't eat the foods that we actually recommend on the Brain Warriors Way? Or also on my previous book, The Omni Diet. So things like green leafy vegetables, nuts, seeds, berries, red meat, any of those things that you're not supposed to eat. Actually, they usually list it as pretty much all meat. They go through this whole list of foods, including even soy. So for vegans, this can be a problem, right? And why would a doctor ever say that? Well, there's actually a lot of reasons. If you have things like kidney stones or thyroid disease, you might have heard that you can't eat some of those foods. So lots and lots of people write to me and say, well, I want to be healthy, but I can't. And so what they end up doing is throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and they end up basically not doing anything for their health at all. So what I want you to focus on is basically focus on what you can have, what you can do, instead of what you can't do. So let's talk about kidney stones for a minute. Why would a doctor tell you not to eat things like vegetables, berries, lean meat, if you have kidney stones? So it's because of the oxalates. So as I'm sitting here having my smoothie with like 3 cups of greens and some berries in it, right? Also with some almond butters, it's loaded with oxalates. So we'll talk a little bit about kidney stones and why they tell you that. But it's a little more complicated, and what ends up happening with some doctors, first of all, I'm not a doctor. So I want to clarify, I'm not a doctor. But this is according to the National Kidney Association, and along with some of my personal friends who are physicians. Many of them I do live chats and podcasts with that you have heard, very well-known physicians that I've trained with at the American Academy for Anti-Aging Medicine. So this is me reporting what I have learned. So kidney stones, it's not quite as simple as just don't eat oxalates, don't eat vegetables, berries, nuts, seeds, soy, meat, because then what's left? And I've actually heard people say that their doctors recommend white potatoes, bread, things like this. So why? Because they focus on the primary form of kidney stones, but believe it or not, there's a whole bunch of types of kidney stones. They come in many different forms. And so you have to know what kind of kidney stone you have. They're not all the same. So first let's talk about what kind of kidney stone you might be having and what causes them. So one is caused by infection. So there's a type of stone that's caused by an infection in your body, and that's completely different. And so those foods don't really affect that. So that's one kind of kidney stone. Another one is more hereditary. A cystine stone is more hereditary. That's the one that's going to make it more difficult. You have to really do what you can to prevent those stones. And then there's things like the calciumoxalate stones. Those are probably the most common. And there's a lot of information out there that we thought to be true. So someone's saying that they're having trouble hearing what I'm saying. Let me turn this up. Are all of you having trouble hearing what I'm saying? So if anyone else is having trouble, let me know. It might be your phone. I'm not sure. So calcium oxalate foods, which include dark green leafy vegetables, meat, nuts, seeds, berries. So all of these things are on that list, sweet potatoes, on that list of what not to eat. But there's a problem. Those foods are really healthy, right? So if you cut those out, a lot of people then sort of give up and they start eating more processed foods, which is really terrible. Okay, so those really good foods are in so many ways healthy for you. So you have to be really careful. And there's a new study, one brand new study out that was actually on the National Kidney Association's website. They talk about how eating those foods is really not as high risk as we once thought. It's not really eating those foods, but the combination and how you eat them might be helpful. For example, if you eat, they're not recommending that you cut calcium from your diet, and they're not recommending that you cut the oxalates from your diet. What they are recommending is that you don't eat one of them by themselves in excessive amounts, that you eat calcium and oxalate foods. So say those green leafy vegetables, nuts, and seeds, along with calcium containing foods together. And the reason why is because that they digest differently. They will bind, those things bind, and they tend to cause stones if they are not eaten at the same time. But if they're eaten at the same time, they will bind in the stomach instead of in your kidneys. Hopefully that makes sense. One of the main ways to reduce the calcium stones is by decreasing sodium. It's not by decreasing calcium. So just pay attention to that. Decreasing sodium can actually help. So that's one of the things that you need to know about that type of stone. Let's see, what other types of stones are there? I want to make sure I don't miss this. I've got some notes here I want to make sure that I cover. Yeah, it's mostly infections, hereditary, or you've got that type of stone, or uric acid stones. That's the other one, uric acid stones. So that's a buildup of uric acid, and most commonly that's from dehydration and being sedentary. So some of the risk factors for kidney stones are actually being overweight. So what happens if you throw this type of diet out the window and you become overweight? Then you're at higher risk for kidney stones. Do you see the catch-22 here? So if you suddenly don't eat like this, you don't eat vegetables and fruits and nuts and seeds, and you start eating more processed foods because you get frustrated and don't know what to do, you gain weight, then all of a sudden you're at higher risk for stones. So you have to be very careful. It's a fine line. So being overweight is one of the high risks. Being dehydrated, very high risk. And then also infections and also family history. So be careful with that. So what you can do is know what kind of stone you have. You need to know what kind of stone you have. That's the first thing you want to find out, because it may not be affected by your diet, those healthy foods. Then one of the reasons, you've probably heard me say this over and over and over, think of protein like medicine. What I mean by that is take it in small doses. We have always said we're not fans of a high protein diet. So because your body has a hard time, not only with the oxalates and all of that, but also with oxidative stress. So it's not really good for your body to go eat a 16-ounce steak. You want to be having small amounts of protein. Someone's asking what kind of vegetables. I will actually get there. So be thinking of your protein like medicine. You really don't need more than a couple of ounces at a time, maybe a few times a day. That's really all you need. So like medicine, it will help reset those hormones of metabolism. It'll increase your focus, balance your blood sugar, but you won't overburden your body that way. So that's one of the things you can do. Increase your water intake. So depending on if you've got uric acid stones, they actually say up to 12 cups a day. If you've got, just even any kind of stone, or everyone anyways, should be having at least 8 to 10 cups of water a day. And adding some lemon to it. Now I know that sounds really weird because lemon's acidic, right? But it doesn't digest acidically. So the byproduct of the digestive process is actually alkaline, and it actually is really good for, they think that citric acid is good for preventing stones. So add a little lemon juice. That's why we have warm lemon water with ginger and a little cayenne pepper every morning. And that lemon water is actually really good for you. So add some lemon a couple times a day, or at least once a day, to your water. That's one thing you can do. We talked about eating the calcium and oxalates together. So let's just say that you have calcium enriched almond milk. We're not fans of dairy, but if you eat dairy, whatever it is, if you have, even almond milk is actually enriched. So they put a lot of calcium in it. So you want to be eating that along with your oxalate foods. So the almonds already have oxalates. If they're adding calcium to it, do you see how that's better than having just one or the other? Decrease your salt. We talked about that. That's going to help. And here's what I want you to really think about. Don't focus so much on what you can't eat. Focus on what you can eat. I would never tell you to not listen to your doctor. If they told you not to eat these foods, then I would never say, oh, ignore that and go ahead and go eat a ton of, vegetables, green leafy vegetables, and go, have a big steak. I would not do that. But I do want to point something out. It's really complicated, and this is why people get confused, because the current studies, the newest studies, show that 9 servings of vegetables a day are what help decrease not only cancer, improve things like obesity, but they actually have been now shown to be associated with decreasing your risk for depression, actually improving people with depression, and also increasing happiness. A direct correlation between happiness and the amount of vegetables you eat. So it becomes then complicated. Well, I've been told I can't have vegetables, but now you're telling me that for my health, I have to eat vegetables. Even the Kidney Association, the National Kidney Association, said they don't recommend cutting these foods out of your diet, these high oxalate foods, because of how healthy they are for you. You can go on their website and read it and then have a discussion with your doctor. Don't go against what he's saying, just go have a discussion with your doctor about it. Think about how you're eating them in combination. And also, if he really doesn't want you, she really doesn't want you eating those foods, then start focusing on what you can have instead of what you can't have. So whenever somebody says, well, I can't eat green leafy vegetables, so I don't know what to do. Okay, there's a whole list of other vegetables you can have. There's red bell peppers, zucchini, squash, apples. Do you see what I'm saying? Focus on low glycemic, but you can still have a whole host. We have a whole list of things in both the Brain Warriors Way and in the Omni Diet, things that are really good for you, fruits and vegetables. Just pick out the ones that are not on that list because there's plenty of them. And then also when it comes to meat, think of it like medicine. Stay away from red meat. There's no reason you have to have red meat. You can have little small amounts of chicken. You can have small amounts of lamb. Lamb is usually a bit healthier than cow meat or that type of a meat. Make sure it's grass-fed. If you're going to have meat, stay away from shellfish and focus on regular deep water fish. Okay, so wild fish is better. So there's plenty that you can focus on that you can have instead of what you can't have. I hope that makes sense. So sweet potatoes are one of the things on the list that's a little controversial. It's on the list of things with high oxalates, but if you're cutting out all the other things and you are increasing your water intake and you're doing all of these things, then that is going to be helpful. Also pay attention if you're sweating a lot in a sauna and you're exercising really hard and increasing your sweat, you've got to be making up that water loss with fluid intake because that will put you at higher risk if you're already at high risk. So let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, sugar. Sugar is one of the things that puts you at very high risk, especially fructose. So sugar and high fructose corn syrup. So again, you can see the catch-22. You cut those other foods out, you suddenly turn to processed foods, which are loaded with sodium, sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and now what? Right? You're going to increase your inflammation, you're at higher risk for obesity, and the last thing you want to do is become sedentary. So one of the controversial items on the list is tea. So tea has been said to be, put you at higher risk for stones, and yet the new studies are they're a little iffy on that. And one of the problems again is that brand new study out shows that women who drink at least 1 cup of tea every day are actually 50% less risk for having dementia. So, what do? Again, think of the rest of this. Put it all in context. Talk to your doctor about it. I would actually recommend you go to the National Kidney Association's website. We can go into the same conversation regarding thyroid because those same foods, those dark green leafy vegetables, soy, some of those products are goitrogens for people with thyroid disease. Exact same issues, okay? And I would say pretty much the same things. Talk to your doctor about it. Focus on the foods you can have, not the ones you shouldn't be having. But you got to get the thyroid treated, right? If you're having a problem with your thyroid, work on it naturally. But if it's not happening naturally, get your thyroid treated. Same thing with stones. Okay, so I hope this was helpful. Someone said, does it depend on the type of tea? This recent study did not actually say what type of tea, but there are studies that show that people who drink 3 cups of green tea daily have longer telomeres. Okay, so basically their DNA is younger. Let me just put it that way. They have younger looking DNA. So green tea tends to be the favorite. That would be where I would focus. And for the person who asked about the vegetables, what I would focus on if your doctor really doesn't want you having those green leafy vegetables, focus on the vegetables we talked about that are not the green leafy vegetables. There's plenty of them you can have. So those bell peppers, onions, cherries, zucchini, squash, apples, oranges, lemon water, that kind of, it doesn't matter if it's hot or cold, I don't believe. So I may be wrong on that. I don't think it matters. Someone asked if it matters if the tea is hot or cold. Also, one of the issues with, another question, one of the issues with a diet that's supposed to be helpful to kidney stones is they'll often say, increase your grain intake. Okay, we would still recommend you decrease your gluten intake. There's no reason you need to be eating gluten, and it just has too many unhealthy effects on brain and gut and all that stuff. So if you are going to increase grains, focus on things like maybe a little bit of whole steel cut oats, a little bit of brown rice, and quinoa, which is actually a seed, not a grain, and stay away from the gluten-containing grains. So that's what I would really focus on if you're going to do that. And we still wouldn't make it a staple. So have a little bit, have a half cup. Don't make it your staple that you because you're going to gain weight and you're going to start craving carbs if you do that. So still plenty of ways to do this in a really healthy way. I hope this has been helpful. The point is to focus on what you can have, not what you can't have. And there are only about 150 things on that list, right? So if you check off 10 of them that you can't have, plenty that you can still focus on. Okay, so let's see. I'm starting keto. I hope you guys like that. We're not anti-keto. It really depends. It depends on your brain type. Keto can be great for some people, great for seizures, great for a lot of things, great for helping you lose weight fast, not great for every brain type. For some people, it'll make them super anxious. So if you're already anxious, it can make you overly anxious. If you are distracted, it can make you focus. It'll help you focus a lot. Also, the protein in keto. Keto should be higher fat. Focus on the fat, right? So keto is higher protein. So if you are more prone to stones, kidney stones, that could be a problem. So make sure you're hydrated and work with your doctor on it. But keto has a lot of benefits. The problem we have with the keto program, there's the one problem. There are too many studies showing the benefits of increasing your vegetables. A little bit of fruit, but especially vegetables. So don't recommend cutting out vegetables from your diet. That's where we stand with that. So we recommend modifying it just a tad. So there you go. So we will cover, you guys are giving me a ton of questions. We'll talk about some of those. I can't cover them all in one chat. Veggies for balancing hormones. We'll have to talk about that. Main thing for balancing hormones, cut sugar out of your diet, increase your exercise. So vegetables in general will help, but you need to cut sugar out of your diet. Okay, talk to you guys later.